So just to answer your question first, so at PG&E we are using the Teradata platform as the big data platform, right? So obviously we went through our POC where we have vendors like Oracle, right? SAP HANA, it was something we looked at, right? Yeah, Oracle Exalytics or maybe IBM TISA, but we went through this whole process, right? And every industry has its own evaluation criteria, right? I mean, granted, there's going to be similar points where they're going to look at scalability, performance, flexibility, compatibility. Looking at the data model in itself, I think, is one of the most crucial things, because that itself determines how you are going to be able to not just use information, but extract it in the form that you want it to be consumed by the analytics sitting on top of it. So that's something which we're doing, and as analytics tools, again, right, business has their own preferences, right? You would have a group that would be comfortable using Tableau, and then there would be a group saying that, oh, you know what, we get more into data modeling, so we like to use SAS. So that's where we are trying to tier basically the architecture on top of it, right? So you have your core platform sitting in there. Now what would actually help is if there's in-database analytics, right? Where I see the industry is still not as mature as it could be, or like Ryan was saying about in-memory analytics, right? So that, you have like Teradata where you have inbuilt SQL tools, but then if you want to, kind of reduce the I/O or the latency and hence increase the performance, right? I think that's one area where I like to really see, kind of vendors coming up with some in-database analytic tools being built. I know SAS is, there was a recent announcement where SAS has kind of partnered with Teradata and are moving that direction. So I think, yeah, it's very critical, that you kind of select your platform based off, what the business needs are and how you see it expanding, and the data model is something which has to be clearly looked into, because I think that's the core.
Right, right.
And just back to your question, I think it's all of the above, frankly, because in PG&E we're seeing it, right? You have a platform that you have built, but then when it comes to analytics, right, there are, again, depending on what you're trying to do, it could be in-house based, right? You could have maybe say a department having these SAS tool builders sitting there for like 15 odd years, and they know how to run the models and get the data in. But you would still have organizations which want to make use of this more on like predictive analysis and real-time analysis for like say kind of operations based kind of things. So that's where we kind of like to leverage some of the tools that are out there that can be used, and then if it can be customized on top, that'll be great. But then there's use cases, right, where kind of you really want to focus on and see what is the value that the tool really brings, and is it that the customization is going to be way more expensive than building it in-house,
Right.
or it's the other way around.
Right.
So there's multiple ways to go to it, but again, I think it depends on what is it that you're trying to solve.
Right. Right. What's very interesting about what you brought up, so can you walk us through the your key criteria for selection and how you got to Teradata? I think that would be very interesting for
Yeah,
the
so
audience.
we basically just performed a proof of concept where we had these are well-known companies. We've invested a lot of time, money, and efforts in building their platforms along with analytics on top. But so what we did was we basically went through a whole set of analysis in terms of we gave them different sort of queries that they need to run on kind of anonymized data that was given to them. So we gave them like 1 year of data, and we told them to expand it to 3 years, right? And then we performed the POC by seeing how well do they run the queries, like I said, right? How robust is the data model, and how much of kind of how well is it built to the industry vertical, right? In this case, the utilities, right? Does it take you all the way from the top of the ISO level going down to generation, transmission, distribution? How easy is it to extend it further, right? So that if we move this initiative beyond customer care, and tomorrow if energy procurement wants to also onboard onto Teradata, right? Is it that the extensibility of the data model is going to be even possible, right? Does it support to an extent where we can probably bring in data where there's logical points, right, where you can cross connect. So the whole point is, what we did was we made them run queries on, basically on their own platforms, along with looking at, okay, how well did it perform in extreme use cases, right? And then obviously we look at, the accelerators that they have on top, right? Analytical tools, partnerships with companies, right? Because then as we move along, right, and there's more sort of analytics that are going to be used in the organizations that can be leveraged. So we went through this whole methodological kind of POC, we assessed the vendors, and then we kind of chose Teradata.
Oh, some questions related to this. Good. Yes. Do you want to stand up and say your name and company, please?
I'm Prasanna. I have a real-time big data startup. We take the hypothesis that many people are looking at the structured end of the problem, meaning once the data is already put in the database, how can I actually query, get analytics on it? I'm more interested in what Brian commented, which is if we sit on the unstructured end of it, which is as the data is coming through the pipe, is there a need to start doing analytics on it? Yes. And if so, what type? Because that's where we are seeing traction from some of our customers, and we believe that it's an area where there is going to be need, but there is lesser solutions. So any take on that?
Please repeat the question.
Oh,
no.
I would actually rather that you just take the microphone. It'd be more accurate.
Okay, if you want to pass that around, there is a microphone there, Charlene, that you can.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Great,
So
thank you.
on the unstructured end, is there a need for analytics, and how much matureness of technology is there? Is probably what I was asking.
Is there a need for analytics, for unstructured data analytics?
As the data comes through, and we start doing analytics.
Yeah.
Then streaming.
Yeah, we do we do that at, analytics is a big thing. It's everything. So we do that at like kind of like an operational data level. Like, do we need to order more fuel for this jet engine? And then we try to look for just immediate patterns. But the longer term, like historical analysis, there's a huge need for it. To be fair, most of our customers are sort of in the early stages of just, I characterize a lot of the newer things that we're doing almost as science projects. Like they haven't got enough data to even kick something like Teradata, into first gear. And they're just, sort of grappling with how do we collect it with machines or devices and get it back. We definitely foresee a need there because we don't do that. We don't do that long-term analysis. And I think particularly in unstructured, I think the other part of your question was, like where would we think the value would be for that kind of unstructured data analysis? And I would think in retail and some environments where you're doing sort of market data crunching, and not trying to take some sort of automatic, or short-term action, like let's order some more materials, or let's order some more fuel, or send a technician out to go do something.
Yeah, I would support that, but even take it one step further. I think analyzing unstructured data is important, but then also putting it in context of other data sources, and quite often it's a combination of structured and unstructured data. And just one example to throw it out, which goes a little bit closer to what you're doing, some of the asset management. Let's just, as an example, take a transformer in the field. Load data, for example, for that. Which is very, very, it's scheduled data, you have consistently for the last 25 years. You have maintenance data, when you did something with that transformer, which is very, very sporadic. Maybe you want to overlay it with weather data. Was that transformer exposed to very high temperatures, which probably makes it age a little bit faster. And then ultimately you want to make a prediction how much longer that thing is gonna last. And is it worthwhile spending another 10K, 50K, 100K, whatever on maintenance, or should you just wait another year and then replace it? I think that's bringing different data sources together and then looking for certain trends and trying to learn from that. That actually generates a lot of value for the customer. But you end up, quite often you end up doing very, very solution-specific things, which raises the point then, is it worth the effort, or how far can you go? And when do you have to say, well, it doesn't make economic sense anymore to bring the analytic solution to a point where it would deliver what you wanted to do, But it's become so expensive that it will never offset the savings you can generate from it.
Expensive to extract, or what is expensive?
No, expensive to implement the solution, because it's a lot of custom implementation there. That's the concern we have. If you come up with some brilliant algorithms, let's talk. I'll buy you lunch.
Okay.
Great. There's a question back in the back. Oh, careful, June.
Hi, I'm Meredith Warshaw. I have a question for Derek. I'm wondering, what is the difference or similarities, the overlap between what you're doing at Siemens Venture and TTP at Siemens? And is everybody in both groups looking for big data? Or I understand that, say, my area, life science, is not under TTP, and I'm just wondering the differences.
That unfortunately creates a lot of confusion in the market, but the answer, I think, is fairly straightforward and simple. Siemens is approaching or let me frame it as, it's all related to external innovation. And how can we tap into that vast pool of external innovations that are happening and bring the relevant ones closer to the mothership? Now, innovations happen at different stages, in different flavors, in different places and everything. And that's why we need a broader toolkit to approach that. And one of the tools in there is venture capital. That's the model I've been describing. And that's where we see technologies which come to a point of, as you described it, customer validation, entering the market. That's when we feel a venture investment makes a lot of sense. TTB's mission, and TTB stands for Technology to Business, and by coincidence the B also as a reminder, they are over in Berkeley. They are looking for very, very early stage innovations. They have a great network into universities and research organizations. It's not by coincidence that they are over in Berkeley. They also have relationships with MIT and other universities. They also have a location in Shanghai, for example, where they work very, very closely with Tongji University there. So they are looking for very early stage technologies, and then they typically do a project with them together, a project defined as let's research something or let's analyze something. How would an application look like? So this is not an equity investment that they make. It's an R&D activity essentially that they will co-fund. And then at the end of that, we'll decide, is that something that can graduate into a commercial relationship with a business unit? Is that something that will actually move into an equity investment by Siemens Venture Capital? We've done one of those last year, for example, in Cubotics up in Menlo Park. Or is it something where at the end of the project we have to conclude, well, it didn't really deliver the results that we were expecting, and we just move on from there.
So do you sort of look at the TTB as like an early incubator at Siemens?
Some of the work they do is like incubation. Helping companies get started and explore their technology in the context of a broader solution that someone like a Siemens is working on. That's clearly part of the model, yeah.
Thanks.
Yes. There was a question in the back.
Hello, Steve Chalizzi from Tanis Communication. This is more on the technology bent question. Given we heard that big data is not enough, it's got to be fast big data in order to be valuable, and we know that in Hadoop environments, MapReduce is batch-oriented and pretty slow. What technologies are you seeing that are addressing that, and are there any startup opportunities for innovation that you think we should look at potentially pursuing?